The 1980s were the golden age of Saturday morning cartoons. But not every show stayed the same from start to finish. Some of them pulled a total personality switch halfway through. Characters got rewritten, plots took wild turns, and sometimes the whole tone shifted like the animators just swapped coffee for rocket fuel. Do you remember when your favorite cartoon suddenly felt like a different show? Stick around, because some of these changes were genius, and others left fans wondering what happened behind the curtain. The Real Ghostbusters. At first, The Real Ghostbusters was dark, atmospheric, and actually a little creepy for a kid's cartoon. It had that gritty New York backdrop, ghost designs that could have stepped out of a horror movie, and a tone that didn't talk down to its audience. But by season 3, the vibe had changed. The culprit? Slimer. Originally a minor comic relief ghost, Slimer suddenly became a mascot-level co-star. He was on the team's side full-time, got his own mini-segments, and even inspired a rebranding to Slimer and The Real Ghostbusters. Writers aimed to make the show friendlier for younger viewers and easier to merchandise. The darker ghost hunts and tense pacing gave way to more comedic, slapstick-driven stories. Even the designs lightened up. The color palette was brighter, the ghosts less grotesque. Hardcore fans noticed right away. Behind the scenes, ABC wanted to broaden the audience and make the series more marketable in toy aisles. It worked commercially, but it split the fan base. Some embraced Slimer as the goofy heart of the team. Others missed the eerie, slow-burn episodes where the ghost-busting felt genuinely dangerous. The change didn't kill the show. It ran for 7 seasons, but it stands as one of the clearest examples of how network meddling can turn a dark supernatural comedy into a safer, wackier romp. Transformers. If you watch Transformers in order, you know exactly when the series changed. It was right after Transformers, the movie, in 1986. The film wasn't just a side adventure. It killed off major characters like Optimus Prime and shifted the entire setting to the year 2006. Suddenly, the Autobots were led by Rodimus Prime, the Decepticons by Galvatron, and Earth was just one piece of a much bigger galactic stage. This was no minor retooling. Season 3 leaned harder into science fiction than the earlier seasons, which had more earthbound, toy-friendly adventures. The storytelling got stranger, with episodes involving parallel dimensions, alien empires, and bizarre character transformations. Some of it was bold and creative, but it also alienated younger viewers who missed the familiar lineup and simpler plots. The change was driven by Hasbro's toy strategy. They wanted to phase out old figures and promote the new ones. That meant writing out beloved characters and cramming in new designs. The gamble worked for merchandising, but the ratings dipped. By season 4, the show was trying to balance the new cosmic scale with fan nostalgia, but it never fully recovered its early charm. Even so, those post-movie episodes remain cult favorites for fans who like their robots with extra drama and weirdness. G.I. Joe, a real American hero. For its first few years, G.I. Joe had that clean, polished Sunbow animation and a perfect balance of military action, espionage, and toy promotion. Then came the DIC takeover in 1989. The change was instant. The animation got cheaper, the voices changed for many characters, and the storytelling shifted from semi-serious military missions to lighter, almost goofy adventures. The early Sunbow years gave us iconic arcs like the Pyramid of Darkness and Arise, Serpentor, Arise, with Cobra feeling like a real threat. Under DIC, the villains were less menacing, more comical, and sometimes even moralistic in their own way. Character rosters also shifted heavily, with a bigger focus on newer Joes and obscure recruits to promote fresh toy waves. Fans who grew up with the Sunbow era were stunned. The gritty battle sequences and sharp one-liners gave way to brighter colors, exaggerated action, and more obvious life lessons. While younger viewers still enjoyed it, the hardcore crowd saw it as a downgrade in both animation quality and tone. Still, the DIC seasons had their own charm. They embraced the absurdity of the G.I. Joe universe and leaned into it. The shift didn't erase the show's legacy, but it marked a clear divide in the fandom, Sunbow purists versus DIC defenders. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. When He-Man first launched in 1983, it was a straight-faced fantasy adventure with just enough moral teaching tacked on to satisfy parents. Every episode had a battle between the noble Prince Adam, He-Man, and Skeletor's scheming forces, with a mix of sword and sorcery action and science fiction gadgets. But as the seasons rolled on, something shifted. Later episodes leaned harder into comedy, often at the expense of tension. Skeletor became more of a cranky comic villain than a fearsome warlord, and side characters like Orko got more screen time. The moral lessons at the end became longer and more pointed, sometimes feeling like the main reason for the episode's existence. Part of this was due to pressure from parents' groups and watchdog organizations that didn't want violent content aimed at kids. Filmation doubled down on making the show safe and uplifting, even if it meant softening the stakes. This change kept He-Man in good standing with broadcasters and parents, but longtime fans noticed the difference. Still, even in its lighter form, He-Man remained a cultural juggernaut, proving that a show could evolve and survive by leaning into its softer side. Inspector Gadget. In its early run, Inspector Gadget played like a spy parody with a hint of danger. The bumbling cyborg detective stumbled into and out of trouble, always saved by his niece Penny and her dog, Brain, though he never realized it. Dr. Claw was a genuine threat, a shadowy villain whose face was never seen and whose plans felt just plausible enough to give the tension weight. Over time, though, the edge softened. Later episodes made Dr. Claw more of a bumbling adversary, his schemes less sinister and more like elaborate pranks. Gadget himself became goofier, sometimes to the point of self-parody. Even the pacing changed, with more emphasis on slapstick gags and less on mystery solving. The reason was simple. The show was hugely popular with very young viewers, and producers leaned into that demographic. That meant brighter visuals, simpler plots, and more comedic beats. While the earlier episodes balanced comedy with an undercurrent of espionage, the later ones felt almost like a Saturday morning sitcom in cartoon form. Still, the show's charm and that unforgettable theme song kept it alive in syndication for decades, proving that sometimes sillier can still sell. She-Ra, Princess of Power. She-Ra debuted in 1985 as the action-packed sister series to He-Man. The early episodes were tightly focused on the Great Rebellion's struggle against the tyrannical horde on Etheria. Adora's double life as She-Ra carried genuine stakes. She wasn't just fighting to save a kingdom. She was redeeming herself after years of serving the enemy. The stories leaned heavily on battle tactics, resistance themes, and the personal cost of living under oppression. Then came the tonal shift. By its later run, She-Ra started moving away from serialized rebellion arcs toward lighter, standalone magical adventures. Instead of planning raids against the Horde, She-Ra and her friends often dealt with wandering wizards, enchanted artifacts, or one-off villains who disappeared as quickly as they appeared. The Horde was still around, but their menace was watered down, often foiled in ways that felt more comedic than threatening. This wasn't random. The series was under constant pressure to appeal to a broader toy-buying audience. More fantasy meant more room for colorful, marketable creatures and play sets. The shift also made the show safer for younger kids, but it trimmed away some of the dramatic edge that had made those early episodes feel bigger than a toy commercial. Even so, She-Ra remained a trailblazer, with one of the most capable, commanding heroines in 80s animation, even if the rebels were spending more time chasing magical trinkets than dismantling the Horde's regime. M.A.S.K. When M.A.S.K. roared onto TV screens in 1985, it was a slick hybrid of G.I. Joe and Transformers, a covert task force with transforming vehicles, battling the criminal VENOM organization in globe-trotting missions. The early episodes had a spy thriller feel, with coded messages, high-tech gadgets, and a real sense of danger. Venom's schemes felt sharp, sometimes even ruthless, and the stakes were clear. Stop the villains or face disaster. Then Season 2 rolled around, and suddenly the elite strike team was racing cars. The espionage tone was traded for the M.A.S.K racing series, where most episodes centered on competitions, rivalries, and trackside drama. The villains were still around, but their schemes now involved sabotaging race events or stealing trophies. The globe-trotting missions and gritty tactics were replaced by more straightforward, kid-friendly plots. Why the switch? Merchandising again. Kenner wanted to push a new line of race-themed toys, and the easiest way to do that was to retool the entire premise. It didn't land with all fans. Many missed the layered spy plots and dangerous heists. The racing era had flashy visuals and new vehicles, but it also marked the point where M.A.S.K stopped feeling like a unique action series and started feeling like a commercial on wheels. Alvin and the Chipmunks. The early Alvin and the Chipmunks of the 1980s stuck close to its roots: musical misadventures, light family comedy, and the occasional moral lesson. Dave Seville wrangled Alvin, Simon, and Theodore through school projects, small-town hijinks, and talent shows. The format was cozy and familiar, with short stories often grounded in the Chipmunks' daily life. But as the seasons went on, the show transformed. By the late 80s, the episodes were far more experimental. Full-on music videos, parodies of blockbuster movies, and fantastical story arcs that pulled the trio into worlds far beyond suburban reality. The 1987 animated film, The Chipmunk Adventure, pushed this shift even further, proving the Chipmunks could carry globe-spanning, high-stakes adventures. The producers leaned into that momentum, bringing in pop culture spoofs, elaborate song and dance sequences, and bigger, bolder set pieces. It made the show more visually varied and appealed to older kids and even some adults. On the flip side, some of the homey, low-stakes charm of the early episodes faded. Still, this reinvention helped keep Alvin and the Chipmunks fresh through the decade and cemented its place as more than just a novelty act. They were now full-blown pop culture players. DuckTales. When DuckTales launched in 1987, it was a bright, adventurous romp inspired by Carl Barks's legendary Donald Duck comics. Each episode sent Scrooge McDuck and his nephews Huey, Dewey, and Louie on treasure hunts across exotic locations, facing wily foes like the Beagle Boys and Flintheart Glomgold. The tone was light but adventurous, Indiana Jones for Saturday mornings. The shift came when the show started introducing darker, more serialized story arcs. The Gizmo Duck episodes brought in a superhero subplot, while multi-part sagas like Treasure of the Lost Lamp and the Time is Money storyline layered in more dramatic stakes. Villains became more varied, including supernatural threats and science-gone-wrong scenarios. Even the animation style subtly evolved to match the heightened tone. These changes weren't accidental. Disney was experimenting with making its TV cartoons feel more like feature films in pacing and scope. While some fans loved the added complexity, others missed the breezy, one-off adventures of the early days. Still, the change helped prove that afternoon cartoons could carry multi-episode arcs and keep audiences hooked, paving the way for the narrative-driven animation boom of the 90s. Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats. In its early episodes, Heathcliff was the headline act, a street-smart orange alley cat getting into mischief, clashing with rivals, and charming his way into trouble. The shorts were simple, comedic, and very much centered on Heathcliff's antics. But then came the Cadillac Cats. This side segment featured Riff Raff, Cleo, and their flashy gang, living a cool, high-energy life in their customized Cadillac. Over time, these segments started stealing the spotlight. The Cadillac Cats stories were more stylish, faster-paced, and often more elaborate than Heathcliff's. Viewers started tuning in as much for Riff Raff's gang as for the title character. Eventually, the balance tipped. Some episodes felt like the Heathcliff segment was just a warm-up for the Cadillac Cats, who became the de facto stars for many fans. The shift gave the show a split personality: cozy neighborhood slapstick on one side, urban cool capers on the other. It wasn't a bad change, but it was a clear one, and it proved that even a star character can end up sharing the stage if the supporting act has enough style. The Smurfs. When the Smurfs premiered in 1981, it was a simple, almost cozy series. Each episode took place in or around the Smurf village, with Papa Smurf, Brainy, Smurfette, and the gang dodging Gargamel's schemes. The formula was consistent: small-scale problems, clever teamwork, and a return to the mushroom houses by the end. Then, mid-decade, the show took a wild detour. Suddenly, the Smurfs were time travelers. A magical clock sent them to different eras, meeting historical figures and facing brand new threats far removed from Gargamel's forest. The tone shifted from fairy tale whimsy to a more adventurous episodic travelogue. Storylines expanded in scope, and the animation style subtly changed to accommodate new settings and costumes. The change came from Hanna-Barbera's push to keep the series fresh after several seasons. By sending the Smurfs through time, they could introduce new backdrops, villains, and situations without breaking the overall kid-friendly tone. While some fans missed the comfort of the original village adventures, others loved seeing the little blue heroes in ancient Egypt or medieval castles. It was a gamble that extended the show's lifespan and proved that even the gentlest of cartoons could go big when needed. Silverhawks. When Silverhawks launched in 1986, it was a serious space operatic cousin to Thundercats. The tone was dark, with the cybernetic law enforcers battling Monstar and his criminal gang in the far reaches of the galaxy. The visuals leaned hard into sci-fi sleekness, and the music, especially that moody opening theme, suggested a straight-faced, high-stakes adventure. But as the series wore on, the mood softened. Monstar became less terrifying and more of a recurring pest. Side characters leaned harder into comic relief, and some episodes felt almost sitcom-like in pacing. The space battles gave way to more self-contained stories with lighter resolutions. Even the dialogue shifted, dropping some of its formal sci-fi flavor for broader, kid-targeted humor. This was partly a reaction to competition from other toy-based cartoons that skewed younger. Merchandising played a role too. Lighter episodes meant a broader appeal, which meant more potential toy sales. While the change disappointed fans who'd been hooked on the darker first batch of episodes, it also gave Silverhawks a slightly longer run than it might have had if it stayed completely serious. It's still remembered as a show with two distinct identities: the edgy, cinematic opener and the safer, breezier follow-up. Filmation's Ghostbusters. Not to be confused with the Real Ghostbusters, Filmation's Ghostbusters started in 1986 as a spiritual successor to the 1975 live-action series of the same name. The early episodes mixed supernatural adventures with a steady diet of campy humor. The tone was quirky, but the ghost-busting still had some sense of mystery and stakes. Midway through its run, the emphasis shifted heavily towards slapstick and gags. The ghosts themselves became goofier, and the show leaned on repetitive comedic beats rather than supernatural suspense. Episodes that once had a touch of eerie atmosphere now played out like comedic chases, complete with exaggerated sound effects and over-the-top pratfalls. The shift was driven by Filmation's desire to make the series appeal to the same younger demographic that was watching He-Man and She-Ra. It also made animation production cheaper. Simpler ghost designs meant faster turnarounds. While it lost some of its early supernatural edge, the sillier Ghostbusters found an audience that preferred laughs over frights. Today it's remembered as the other Ghostbusters cartoon, but for fans who saw both eras, the change in tone is impossible to miss. Super Friends. The early 80s Super Friends was the definition of safe superhero television. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman solved problems with minimal violence, offering clean resolutions and friendly moral lessons. Villains like Lex Luthor and Cheetah were more mischievous than menacing, and every episode ended with the heroes smiling in the Hall of Justice. That changed with the challenge of the Super Friends and later Superpowers team seasons. Suddenly the tone was sharper. The Legion of Doom brought real stakes, with more ambitious schemes and more intense confrontations. Action scenes became bolder, the animation slightly more dynamic, and the villains actually won small victories from time to time. This evolution mirrored the changing tone of superhero comics in the 80s, which were growing darker and more complex. While Super Friends never went full grim, the later seasons offered a more satisfying sense of conflict and tension. For kids who grew up on the earlier, gentler episodes, the difference was dramatic. It felt like the training wheels had finally come off the Justice League's cartoon adventures. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started as a surprisingly faithful, though softened, adaptation of the darker Mirage comic. The first season had a grittier urban feel, more emphasis on Shredder as a serious threat, and tighter, action-driven plots. The Turtles cracked jokes, but the humor was balanced with genuine peril. As the show's popularity exploded, the tone shifted toward broad comedy. Shredder and Krang became bickering comedic foils, and episodes leaned on absurd villains like Pizza Face or Mutant Frogs. The action was still there, but it was wrapped in bright colors, running gags, and increasingly outrageous scenarios. The Turtles themselves became more defined by their catchphrases and quirks than their ninja skills. This wasn't accidental. Playmates Toys and CBS saw that the youngest viewers were the biggest merch buyers. The humor-heavy approach made the show safer for that audience, while creating endless opportunities for toy tie-ins. Older fans noticed the drop in tension, but for a generation of kids, the wackier version was the definitive TMNT. It's a classic case of a cartoon evolving from edgy cult hit to mainstream juggernaut by trading grit for giggles. So, there you have it. 15 cartoons from the 1980s that couldn't resist reinventing themselves mid-run. Sometimes it saved the show, sometimes it split the fan base, and sometimes it turned a cult hit into a merchandising empire. Which version of these shows do you remember best? The early, edgier seasons or the lighter, more kid-friendly ones? Drop your favorites in the comments, hit that like button if this brought back memories, and subscribe for more deep dives into the cartoons that shaped our childhoods.